So, can you state your name?
Melody Harris.
And are you comfortable with your name being shared for this archive project?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Okay. What city and state do you reside?
I reside in Huntersville, North Carolina.
Where were you born?
I was born in a small town called Roxborough, North Carolina. And for those who haven't heard of Roxborough, it's about 30 minutes north of Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. And what year were you born?
I was born in 1966.
Okay. I cannot. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to interrupt, but how how long have you been a Huntersville or Mecklenburg County resident?
We have been here, my family and I, for 27 years. It's hard to believe that 27 years.
Wow. Okay, we're going to move on to the coronavirus questions.
Okay.
What are the most important things you know about the coronavirus?
I think the most important things I know about the coronavirus is something that you don't want to wish on your worst enemy. You pray that no one is affected by the disease. When we first were introduced to it, it was unknown. And so there were so many unknowns about who can get it and where you can catch it, who's affected by it, who's exempt from it. And what we've learned throughout this pandemic is that no one's exempt from it. Whether you're young, old, black, white, Asian, it does not see color, it does not see race, it does not see sex. It is something that is out there for, I don't know, I hate to say to destroy us, but it's something out there that could definitely destroy us if we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah. What effect has the crisis had on your friendships or relationships, and have they been changed in any way? And if so, how?
I think the effects, relationships with friends and family, has actually brought us closer together. It's actually made us more caring for each other. When we first experienced the pandemic and everything had to shut down, we have a family of five. And one of my daughters, my youngest daughter, was away at college. And so her semester was interrupted prematurely because of COVID. So she came home, back home before she wanted to. And so I have a high schooler. My son is in high school and his school was shut down. And my oldest daughter working from home, and my husband and I both working from home. So we all had to be in the house longer than what we usually are together. And so just making sure that each other felt okay, that we had mental health checks with each other because it took us away from our outings and from our friends. And being able to connect through Zoom, which is something I learned by force, because it's not something that I would choose to do. I'd rather see people, be able to talk to people, touch people, hug people. And our friendships, it allowed us to look at different ways to connect, and with our family also look at different ways to connect. I can say with my immediate family that we had more movie nights than what we typically would, which is a good thing. We had to get used to just being at home together all day, every day for a while. You know, a weekend is different than 5, 7 days a week together, not being able to do the things that you normally do. So I think that it did bring us closer together. It also allow us to learn to be by ourselves sometimes when you needed that outlet. With my friends, it allowed us to stay connected, to check in more, to make sure that everyone was okay. I know with our Delta chapter, Charlotte Alumni chapter, we have very diverse group of membership. So we have older members. Our oldest member will be 97. And so during all of this, we're constantly checking on her to make sure that she's okay. She lives alone. And so we wanted to make sure that she was okay. So it allowed us to exercise our sisterly bond and to enhance our sisterly bond, just in the sorority. We have other elder members that we check in often and knowing that they live alone or if they were in assistance living facility where we would typically go visit and couldn't, just to look for unique ways to be able to let them know we're still here, we still think about you, and we still care for you. So again, I think it allowed us to build our relationships, learn to take care and be concerned for others a lot more.
Thank you. Was there a time you stepped in to help someone affected by COVID-19? And I think you just mentioned that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned with the sorority, we have a diverse membership, and yes, there were times often that we would make phone calls or make sure that they were okay or let them know that we're still here. Take dinner to those during the holidays when they couldn't be with their loved ones or with um, those that are local and still fearful of, you don't want to make one of our older or oldest members sick because it's no guarantee that she would bounce back. So yes, during the first Thanksgiving that we experienced COVID, we did, my family and I took dinner to two of our oldest members of the chapter Thanksgiving dinner, and they were very grateful for that. And we were excited and happy to be able to do that. We were all masked up and with gloves on, and gave them dinner, at the door. And we couldn't hug, we couldn't just wave through the door, but they were very appreciative that we checked on them that way.
Oh, that's nice. Um, okay. Describe your experience going out in public at the height of the pandemic, and what did it feel like wearing the mask and gloves?
Yes, yes, yes. That was so different. And I was one that said, I'm not wearing a mask. What are we wearing a mask for? But then at the height of COVID, oh yeah, it was like an accessory. I like you would go out with your coat, where's your mask? And the call would be before we all walked out the door, do you have a mask? And put your mask on when we get to where we needed to be and going into the grocery store. And at first I thought, looked at people weird that wore masks. And then when I started to wear masks and more people, I looked at people weird who didn't have on masks and gloves. And then, we learned that gloves were probably the doing more harm than anything because we're still touching because the disease was so unknown and how you contracted it, came in contact with it. And so you will wear gloves thinking you were protecting yourself, but you may be doing more harm. So we nixed the gloves and then definitely mask. And it became one of those where our the turning signal of our car or the gear shift of our car became like a token for the many masks that we would have to make sure that we had one in the car for wherever we went. So even now, both being vaccinated at the whole family and not wearing a mask or not being required to wear a mask feels weird, where 17 months ago wearing one was weird and now not wearing one seems weird.
That's something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been spending your time in new ways? And if so, can you describe?
No, definitely. This platform is certainly a new way for me. Um, During or before the pandemic and going back to the sorority, we would meet on a monthly basis and we would meet in person. We would have programs in person. We would gather in person. And then March of 2020 was the last time that we were able to get together. We actually hosted an event called Delta Authors on Tour, and we highlighted and celebrated reading literacy with the Charlotte community and other members of the sorority. And we celebrated and partied like it was 1999 and like it was our last. And who knew that it was? And that was something that we really, really had to pivot because we were used to meeting in person or having a conference call, but not certainly conducting Delta business over Zoom. And I had to learn this platform, like binge learn, to figure out how to pivot to be able to carry on the things that we needed to do. And so I literally subscribed to Zoom and literally just played with this platform to see the possibilities and introduced it with other members of the chapter by hosting just general chats to allow people to be able to mute and unmute and just learn the different things. And if you had told me 17 months ago that I want you to learn Zoom, which is an online meeting platform, I would have said, no, don't want to do that. I want to see you face to face. And when everything came to such a halt and trying to just figure out, okay, well, what do we do now? How do we continue to do the things that we do for the community? And this virtual world, I tell you, it's one of those now. We can navigate it just like anything else you don't want to do, but when you're made to do it, you learn and make the best of it. We've held successful programs. We've probably reached more people than what we could have in person. So learning this platform is something new that I was, I would say, forced to learn thanks to COVID.
Yeah. What was one thing you missed the most during the pandemic?
The thing that I miss the most, there are probably a couple of things. One of the things the most is attending church. Our church has been virtual. We had live stream church before, but we were a church going family. And so we have not started to gather in person yet, but I know that we will. And I'm hoping and prayerful for the end of the year, or at least at the beginning of the new year. But that's one of the things that I missed. And the second thing that I missed when the hair salons closed, oh my gosh, I thought, what in the world am I going to do? What am I going to do? I am one of those who is a faithful every 2 weeks appointment with my hairdresser. And I had to buy shampoo, I had to buy a curling iron, I had to buy a flat iron. I miss that. And who knew how much I would miss it? The third thing that I missed was the nail salon. Right before everything closed, I had S&S, which is the powder, the dip, and it was time for another one. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this off? How do I get these things off? So I guess with me, the things that were self-care for me that I look forward to is what I miss the most.
Wow, we could probably do an entire documentary on Black women
Hmm.
in hair in the
Exactly.
pandemic.
That's right. That's right. That would be a popular thing there. How to navigate, or how did you navigate?
Mhm. Okay. Something that you put off during the pandemic that you plan to do more of once restrictions are lifted.
Hmm. Something that we put off. I don't know if it's anything that I put off that I plan to do more of. And I say that because of what I shared before with the family having more movie nights instead of going out to the movies. And so that was a replacement that basically I think it's an enhancement. Probably if I had to say something that I will do more of, again, I'm stuck because I cannot think of something that I would do more of. I think that with the changes that we needed to make, we made the best of the situation and actually are things that we could keep and continue to do the things that we do as a family and with friends.
Okay. Did you work during the pandemic?
I did. I worked from and worked from home for 17 months and loved it. And that is something that I did not think that I could do because of the different accesses to the systems that I needed. I didn't think it was something that I could do to work from home. And when we were made to stay at home, which was thankfully so, I proved that, yep, I can work from home and I like it. And I like it. I know that not everybody's home condition is conducive to working from home. You may have little kids that need attention, and you have to juggle between working and paying attention to the kids. But I'm at the point where I love my home office and I would love to continue to work from my home office. Zoom is another thing for work that is different for us. Whenever we needed to meet, we were close enough where we could walk down the hall or call a meeting and we all came together. And with us working from home, we were forced to meet via Zoom. And we proved that that works too. And so I loved working from home.
Okay. How did the lockdown change your normal routines?
The lockdown changed my normal routine for me again, I think for the better. And I would focus on work. Work for me is just a small commute. I work in Charlotte, but live in Huntersville. It's not that far, but it saves time when I worked at home, where I was always on time. I was never late because it wasn't that far to walk, and I did not have to account for the travel time. If I ended just a little early to run an errand, I could always just come right back to it and continue to work. Whereas if I was in the office, I'm finished for the day and that's it. I'm not visiting it until the next day. So I think that a lot of my daily routine for work was actually better for me having to work from home and during the pandemic. If there is a daily routine, or I would say a weekly routine, or just Delta as part of the chapter being a routine in which we meet often, that changed. And again, it changed because we couldn't get together, and that's what we're accustomed to. But now we've grown accustomed to meeting in this way.
Okay. Well, we're going to look ahead now. So these
Mhm.
questions are a little different, but do you feel better prepared for another lockdown? And are you concerned there will be another lockdown?
I would say yes, I'm better prepared. And I think that Charlotte in itself, the state in itself, is better prepared because we know what to do and we know what our abilities and capabilities and limitations are. And we will be able to function better because pre COVID and when COVID came, it was like, you're going down the highway and then all of a sudden you stop and then you have to figure out another way to get home and you're not familiar on how to do it. And once you figure it out, okay, then you can start pedaling again and you can start functioning again. And I think if we were to have another lockdown and the way things are going now with the different strands of COVID and the different states and the different areas that are reacting differently, I think that we may have a similar reaction of a lockdown, but not totally just everything closed or everything stops functioning. I think we're better prepared to deal with a lockdown than we were without experiencing it at all.
Mhm. What are two emotions you are currently feeling related to the pandemic?
I think anxiety and I would say confusion, and both are related to, is my vaccine enough? Do I need to wear a mask? Do I need to continue to wear a mask? Should I go to the grocery store without my mask? Should I be okay with going to a restaurant? It's just the unknown. And the unknown to me or for me brings anxiety and confusion as to, I'm not sure what and how we need to navigate now. It seems like during the height of the pandemic, as we were starting to, it was unfolding and we were learning more about it, seems like we had more structure on what we needed to do. And now that we are hopeful in coming out of the pandemic or slowly coming out of the pandemic, there's confusion on what we need to do.
Mhm. Are there any lessons learned during the pandemic that will stick with you for the rest of your life? And what is the biggest lesson you've learned?
Hmm. I think lessons learned would be not to take things for granted. And that those things would be, don't assume there's one way to do anything. Don't assume that there's one way to get a task done. Don't assume that there are not other options to explore. Um, I think for me, the biggest lesson is to be open to learn new things. And this, again, this Zoom platform is something that I would not have raised my hand to do. Yeah, but it's something that turned out to be a good thing to do. So I think, yeah, the biggest lesson learned is to be more open, to try different things, to look at things with a different lens, to just explore how creative we are. We didn't know that we could get things done in such a creative and innovative way. I think it tapped into different skill sets that we didn't know we had. And I think that again is a lesson learned to always just want to learn more, better yourself, and just be open to different experiences.
Okay, and do you have any additional stories to share about your experience with COVID?
I think, thankfully, I was not affected or am not affected by the disease. I would say in immediate family, I do and have friends, know of friends that have had COVID and thankfully bounced back from it. I have had friends that I know that have lost loved ones due to COVID. And it is something that I never would have thought I would have experienced in my lifetime. I know that there has been things that have happened, pandemics that have almost happened, or polio is one that I've heard people talk about as the last thing. I didn't experience it, but it did seem as if it was similar to this with the vaccine. And we know that it's history now, but I never thought that in my lifetime I would be part of this type of history of experiencing a pandemic that could basically change everything that we know as normal and develop a new normal that I would be part of.
Okay, and this is my last question. Do you have any photos, writings, artwork, or video related to your experience with the COVID-19 pandemic that you would like to be archived with this project?
I think that we do, and most of it would be along with the sorority and the chapter, and with us having to pivot and continue the service that we provide to the Charlotte Mecklenburg community, again in this Zoom format. So we do have pictures. We actually hosted community parade donation drives that was much different for us. So we do have some footage and pictures of those drives where we actually are social distancing and collecting items to give to those who are in need. We do have different advertisements and literature and other programs that we're able to share of what those type of programs were and how successful they were and the types of interest that we had at our programs and the different topics. And most of our topics, all of our topics were around COVID and how to be successful and to stay fit and healthy, and just different self-care and self-help things for the Charlotte community and ourselves during this time. So we do have things that we can share.
Oh, great, great. And that is the end of the interview. I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.